Let me ask you something straight from the heart. Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you love and felt a wall between you, a wall built not from bricks, but from silence, from broken promises, from pain that was never healed? If you've ever lost trust in a relationship, or had someone lose trust in you, then you know how heavy that pain can be. But here's the truth. No matter how broken the bond, it can be rebuilt. Trust can be restored. Connection can be reignited. You don't need a perfect past to create a powerful future. You just need the courage to show up, own your truth, and lead with love. And that's what we're gonna do today. Let's break this down. 1. Acknowledge the pain without living in it. When trust is broken, pain enters. It can feel like betrayal, rejection, abandonment. But here's the secret. Pain is a messenger, not a sentence. Where there is pain, there was once deep love. Don't run from the pain, acknowledge it, lean into it, feel it, but then make a decision. You're not going to live in that story anymore. You're going to write a new one. 2. Take radical responsibility. You want to rebuild trust. Own your part. Even if it's 10%, own it fully, not blame, not guilt, responsibility. Because here's the thing, when you take responsibility, you take back your power. It's not about who was right. It's about what's right. For the relationship, for the future, for your growth. Speak the hard truth. Say what you've avoided. Be real, because authenticity is magnetic. 3. Understand the emotional blueprint. Every one of us has an emotional blueprint. How we were wired to give and receive love, how we react under stress. To rebuild trust, you must understand the emotional blueprint of the person in front of you. Their fears, their needs, their triggers, their love language. You can't connect with someone if you don't understand how they operate. So ask questions, listen deeply, be curious, not critical. Most people don't want to be right. They want to be seen, heard, valued. 4. Stack little wins. Trust doesn't rebuild in a day. It rebuilds in the daily moments. The call you said you'd make, and made it. The truth you didn't hide. The presence you brought to a hard conversation. Small acts of consistency create big reservoirs of trust. Be dependable, be predictable, be present. 5. Lead with vulnerability, not ego. Rebuilding trust requires vulnerability, and that means risking being hurt again. But here's what I've learned. The strongest people are not the ones who guard their hearts, but the ones who open them, even after they've been broken. So say, I'm scared. Say, I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. Say, I still love you, and I'm willing to fight for us. That kind of raw honesty creates breakthroughs. So listen to me right now. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not the broken version of yourself. You are the builder, the rebuilder, the architect of the love and trust you desire. Whether it's your marriage, your family, a friendship, or even the relationship with yourself, you can rebuild. You can reconnect. You can rise again. But it starts with a choice. Right now, not tomorrow, not when they come to you, now. So here's what I challenge you to do. Call that person, write the letter, apologize, forgive, have the conversation. Be the one who shows up with love even if you're afraid. Because in the end, relationships are the oxygen of life. And when we rebuild them with truth, vulnerability, and relentless love, we don't just change our relationships. We change our destiny. Let's go rebuild. Let's go reconnect. Let's go live fully, love deeply, and trust again. When trust is broken in a relationship, pain becomes an unavoidable companion. It might feel like betrayal, rejection, or a sense of deep loss. This pain can be overwhelming. It can cloud judgment, create distance, and sometimes even make us question our own worth. But while pain is powerful, it's not permanent. It's a signal, not a sentence. It's there to show you where something important once lived and where healing is now needed. A major mistake people make is trying to suppress or deny that pain. They bury it, avoid it, or cover it up with distractions, work, arguments, silence, or even another relationship. But what we resist persists. When you refuse to acknowledge emotional pain, you end up carrying it with you into every future interaction. It becomes baggage. It becomes a filter through which you interpret every word, every action, every silence. It becomes a barrier to connection. The first step toward rebuilding trust and connection isn't fixing the other person. It's recognizing what's been wounded inside yourself. Give yourself permission to feel. That's not weakness, that's strength. Feeling pain is not the same as drowning in it. It's about allowing the emotions to surface, naming them, and facing them without judgment. This is emotional maturity. It's the gateway to healing. Acknowledging pain also creates the foundation for empathy. When you can say, "Yes, this hurt me," without blaming, accusing, or shutting down, you open the door for real conversation. You allow the other person to see your humanity. That's powerful. That's disarming. And that's often the moment where healing truly begins. Not when you argue to be right, but when you reveal how it really made you feel. But here's the key. Acknowledging pain isn't about staying stuck in the story. It's not about replaying the betrayal on a loop. It's about being honest with yourself so that you can begin the process of letting it go. Pain is the place you start from. It's not the place you build your future. Only when you allow yourself to sit with the pain, without judgment, without resistance, can you start to understand what you need, what was broken, and what it will take to build something stronger. When trust is damaged, one of the most powerful steps you can take is to own your part in what happened. That doesn't mean taking the full weight of blame if it wasn't all your fault. But it does mean taking radical responsibility for your words, your actions, your choices, and even your silence. Responsibility is different from guilt. Guilt keeps you stuck. Responsibility sets you free. It puts you in control of how you move forward. In any relationship breakdown, there's rarely a completely innocent or completely guilty party. Most of the time, there's a buildup of unmet needs, unspoken truths, unresolved emotions, and misaligned expectations. Taking responsibility means having the courage to ask yourself, what did I miss? What did I allow? What did I avoid saying? It requires humility to look inward, not to shame yourself, but to understand yourself more deeply. This step is uncomfortable, but that's where the transformation begins. When you stop pointing fingers and start owning your role, you instantly shift the energy of the relationship. You stop being reactive and start being proactive. You go from victim to creator. That shift alone can create a ripple effect, even if the other person hasn't changed yet. Taking responsibility also builds credibility. When someone sees you take ownership of your mistakes, without excuses, without deflecting, they start to feel safer. They recognize that you're not hiding behind pride or ego, and in a space of safety, trust can begin to regrow. Owning your truth is not weakness, it's leadership. It shows emotional maturity, and maturity rebuilds bridges that blame burns down. This process starts with reflection. Write it down, say it out loud. Apologize if necessary, not to manipulate or force forgiveness, but because it's the right thing to do. Be honest about where you fell short, what you've learned, and how you're committed to doing better. Not perfectly, but consistently. It's easy to defend your position and explain why you reacted the way you did, but rebuilding trust isn't about being right. It's about being real, and the real work begins when you look in the mirror and say, this is what I can control. This is where I begin again. That's the foundation of growth, connection, and lasting change in any relationship. Every person brings a unique emotional blueprint into a relationship, a combination of their past experiences, upbringing, wounds, and beliefs about love, trust, and connection. Understanding this blueprint is essential if you want to rebuild trust and reconnect on a deeper level. Without it, you're trying to speak a language the other person doesn't understand, and that always leads to miscommunication, frustration, and emotional distance. We all have patterns. Some people shut down when they feel hurt. Others lash out. Some crave closeness while others need space to feel safe. These patterns are rarely about you. They're about the emotional wiring that's been formed over years. When trust is broken, it's easy to take everything personally, but healing begins when you step back and ask, what's really going on behind their behavior? You begin to shift from reaction to understanding. Start by getting curious, not critical. Ask questions with genuine intent to understand. What makes them feel safe? What triggers their fear? How do they show love? And how do they receive it? Often, rebuilding trust isn't just about correcting a mistake. It's about learning how to love someone in the way they're wired to receive love. That insight is powerful. This also applies to yourself. You must understand your own emotional blueprint. What childhood experiences shaped your beliefs about trust? What do you fear most in relationships? Abandonment, rejection, failure? When you know your own patterns, you stop projecting them onto others, and you begin to communicate from a place of awareness instead of reactivity. Think of this like learning a map. If you're lost and frustrated, it's not because the map is broken. It's because you haven't learned how to read it. Emotional blueprints are the maps to human connection. The more you study them, the more compassion you build, for the other person and for yourself. When you recognize that both people in a relationship are operating from learned emotional programming, you create space for empathy. You begin to speak each other's emotional language. And when that happens, misunderstandings start to dissolve, defensiveness lowers, and real trust begins to take root. Because connection doesn't come from surface-level fixes. It comes from emotional fluency, from knowing what lies behind the behavior, and meeting that space with presence and patience. Trust isn't rebuilt through one grand gesture. It's rebuilt through small, consistent actions that align with your words. When trust has been broken, the other person isn't just listening to what you say anymore. They're watching what you do. That's why stacking small wins is one of the most powerful tools in the process of reconnecting. These wins are the daily demonstrations that you are reliable, present, and emotionally invested. It might start with something as simple as following through on a promise, showing up on time, being emotionally available during a conversation, or remembering something important they mentioned. Each of these moments becomes a brick in the new foundation you're building. When repeated consistently, they send a message louder than any apology ever could. You can count on me again. In relationships, trust is like a bank account. Every consistent action, every honest moment, every fulfilled promise is a deposit. Every broken word, every ignored message, every defensive reaction is a withdrawal. After a breach of trust, that emotional bank account is in the red. Your job is to start making deposits, no matter how small. Over time, those deposits add up. They start to shift how the other person feels around you, not instantly but gradually. These small wins also build confidence within yourself. When you show up differently, calmer, more honest, more grounded, you begin to feel your own growth. You're no longer just trying to fix the past. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't repeat it. That self-trust becomes the energy you bring into the relationship, and it has a ripple effect. Consistency is key here. You can't be steady for a week and then vanish emotionally for a month. Rebuilding trust is not about perfection. It's about showing up regularly with integrity and presence. It's about being there in the little moments when they need reassurance, clarity, or simply your quiet presence. That's how you communicate. I'm not just saying I've changed, I'm living it. And it's not about waiting for the other person to acknowledge your efforts. These small wins aren't just for them. They're about becoming the version of yourself you can be proud of. One small action, one honest choice, one consistent step at a time. Rebuilding trust requires courage, but not the kind that comes from force or control. It's the courage to be vulnerable, to drop the mask, and to show up fully, even when you're unsure of how you'll be received. When trust is broken, the temptation is to protect yourself. to put up walls, to act strong, to stay guarded. But the real strength lies in allowing yourself to be seen, especially when you feel most exposed. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's honesty without armor. It's the willingness to say, I hurt you, and I regret it. Or I'm afraid of losing this connection, but I'm here. That kind of openness is raw, it's real, and it's exactly what builds emotional safety. When you drop the ego and speak from the heart, you create a space where healing can actually begin. You stop performing and start connecting. Ego, on the other hand, blocks restoration. It says, I didn't do anything wrong, or you should be over this by now. Ego defends, deflects, and distances. Vulnerability does the opposite. It leans in, listens, and softens. It opens the door to understanding and shows the other person that you're not just trying to win the argument. You're trying to win their trust back. Leading with vulnerability also means being open about your needs and fears. Say what's hard to say, admit what you don't know, ask for reassurance without shame. The more emotionally honest you are, the more real the relationship becomes, and realness is what trust is built on. People don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be authentic. This kind of emotional exposure may feel risky, especially if your vulnerability has been rejected in the past. But to rebuild something meaningful, you have to be willing to be seen as you are. Not the polished version, not the guarded one, the real one, because only the real you can create real connection. Vulnerability also invites reciprocity. When you go first, when you drop your defenses and speak your truth, it often gives the other person permission to do the same. That's where the walls begin to come down. That's where the distance begins to shrink. Vulnerability doesn't guarantee the outcome you want, but it guarantees that you're showing up with integrity, with courage, and with your heart in the right place. Rebuilding trust and connection doesn't happen by waiting for the other person to make the first move. It starts with you. It starts with a decision to stop standing still in the silence, the hurt, or the fear, and instead to take a step forward. Even if you're the one who was hurt, even if you're afraid of rejection, even if you don't know how it will be received, taking initiative shows commitment, courage, and emotional leadership. Many people wait for the perfect moment, the right words, the right time, the right circumstances, but healing doesn't wait for perfection. It responds to presence. The longer you wait, the deeper the disconnection grows. So you must be willing to go first, reach out, say the first real thing, extend the first olive branch. It doesn't mean begging or chasing. It means choosing love over pride, truth over silence, and action over avoidance. Making the first move might look like an honest conversation, a handwritten note, a heartfelt apology, or a simple, genuine check-in. What matters most is the energy behind it. If you show up with blame or defensiveness, the door closes. But if you show up with humility, sincerity, and a desire to reconnect, not to control the outcome, but to reopen the line of communication, you create a space where trust can begin to regrow. Taking the first step also shifts the dynamic. It breaks the cycle of waiting, wondering, and assuming. It turns you from a passive participant into an active creator of change. And even if the other person isn't ready to meet you halfway right away, your effort matters. It plants a seed. It shows that something in you is evolving, and that evolution can be the catalyst for transformation on both sides. This isn't about taking all the responsibility or forcing reconciliation. It's about leading with intention. It's about being the one who decides that the past will not dictate the future, that the story isn't over just because it's had some painful chapters. When you take the first step, you give both people a chance to heal, to grow, and to reconnect from a place that's deeper, wiser, and more grounded than before.